So picture this. It's the middle of the night in Ghaziabad, India. A neighbor is jolted awake by the sound of three distinct thuds. On the pavement outside, three young sisters are found dead. And when police get inside their locked bedroom, they find a diary with a message that changes everything. This case absolutely gripped the entire country, but the real mystery wasn't just how they died. It was which story about their deaths was the real one.
And this one sentence, tucked away in their diary, hints at something so much darker and more complicated than the story that would soon be splashed across every headline. It was a critical clue that was almost completely buried by a much more sensational story. To really get why this case became such a national obsession, we have to start with the first story that everyone heard, the absolutely terrifying tale of a deadly online game. Okay, so these are the tragic, undisputed facts. Three sisters, Nishika, Pachchi, and Paki, who were reportedly inseparable, ended their lives together. But the question on everyone's mind was immediate. Why? What could possibly lead to this?
Well, it was their own father who gave the first and by far the most explosive answer. He told police his daughters had been completely addicted to a dangerous online game, that it had taken over their lives, and he claimed that when he finally took their phones away, they just couldn't cope. That one statement completely framed the entire investigation from the get-go.
The media, of course, ran with it, and they quickly gave this alleged game a name, the Korean Lover Game. And the details that started coming out were just horrifying. It was described as this interactive challenge, a series of tasks designed to isolate and ultimately destroy the young people playing it.
And you can see right here why this whole idea was so chilling. The story went that it started with something innocent, like watching videos. But then it supposedly moved to adopting new identities, cutting off your family, and then escalating to self-harm, all leading up to one final, fatal command. This narrative absolutely terrified the public.
But here's where the story takes a massive turn. As police started to dig deeper, the entire foundation of this terrifying story just began to crumble. The search for this so-called Korean lover led them somewhere they did not expect at all. So, here it is, the crucial question that flipped this entire case on its head. After going through their phones, searching their room, did they find any proof that this game even existed?
And the official answer was a definitive, resounding no. The police went on the record stating they found absolutely zero evidence of a Korean lover game. Nothing. The whole sensational story was completely unsubstantiated.
So, if there was no game, what did they find? Well, their room was basically a shrine to Korean culture. There were diaries filled with references to K-pop. They'd even adopted new names for themselves, Maria, Eliza, and Cindy. And yeah, they found mentions of other popular horror games, but there was absolutely no sign of that 50-task death challenge that had supposedly driven them over the edge. Okay, so with the whole game theory falling apart, investigators turned their attention right back to the man who started it all, the girl's father. And it turns out his story was just full of holes.
Let's start with the money, because this was a huge red flag. The father, Shadam Kumar, at first claimed he was about 1 to 2 million rupees in debt. But what police and neighbors were saying suggested the real number was closer to 20 million. I mean, that's a massive discrepancy. It raises some serious questions about how much distress the family was really in, and frankly, about the father's credibility. And when you lay out a timeline, you start to see this really disturbing pattern of long-term turmoil. You've got a previous unresolved death back in 2015. Then in 2020, the girls are pulled out of school for good.
And in the final months of their lives, their father sells their phones, their only connection to the outside world, right before they die. So you've got to be wondering, if the game wasn't real, why did the story spread like wildfire? Well, it might be because the media, and all of us really, had heard a very, very similar story before.
I mean, think about it. This narrative of a deadly online challenge preying on teenagers, it feels eerily familiar, doesn't it? Was this really some new threat, or is it just an echo of a previous moral panic?
Just look at this comparison. The Korean lover story is almost a carbon copy of the Blue Whale Challenge from a decade earlier. Both had 50 escalating tasks, both had the exact same horrifying goal, and in both cases, hard evidence was almost impossible to find. The media pretty much just grabbed a pre-existing template of fear and slapped a new name on it.
All right, so this is the crucial point. If we take the game out of the equation, what was actually going on inside that apartment? The evidence doesn't point to some digital phantom. It points to a real-world existence that was just crushing. You have to try and picture their reality. These girls hadn't been to school in 6 years. They had no friends other than each other. The whole family, all 9 of them, reportedly slept together in just one room. Their physical world was incredibly small, incredibly confined. So that online world of Korean culture, it wasn't just a hobby. It was their only escape.
And that brings us right back to this devastating line from their diary. A line that the whole gaming panic just completely drowned out. This wasn't about completing a task for some stranger online. This was a direct cry for help, an allegation of physical abuse happening inside their own home.
And then in their final weeks, their one and only escape route was severed when their father sold their phones. And on top of that, their diary entries suggest they were terrified of being forced into early marriages. Their digital world vanished, and their real-world future must have felt like an inescapable trap.
So, in the end, you're left with 2 completely different stories. You have the one the media blasted everywhere, of this faceless digital predator, and then you have the one the evidence actually points to, a tragic story of 3 girls trapped by extreme isolation, financial chaos, and alleged abuse.
And even after everything we've looked at, some huge questions are still just hanging in the air. Police themselves noted the cremation happened unusually fast. One of the girls' mothers was reportedly heard saying she would expose everything, but she has never spoken publicly. And that death from 2015 still casts a very long shadow over this family's history.
And that really leaves us with this final thought. The idea of a killer online game is, without a doubt, terrifying. But maybe, just maybe, the more terrifying story is the one that might actually be true. A reality so unbearable that 3 young sisters felt there was no other way out.